So I'm sitting here with Tim Kaufman, who we got connected through Josh Lajani, and has an incredible weight loss story, and decided to set up a Skype call. And so here we are chatting. Tim, thanks for taking the time to chat with me. Can you tell me where you're from and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from Buffalo, New York, about 20 miles east of Buffalo. So we live in kind of a small rural setting. Um, and I'm 43, and I'm a school teacher. Now I am. And yeah, so I'm married. I have two children, and life is good.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about your heaviest? Obviously, I saw your video, and a couple other people may have seen it as well. But can you talk a little bit about your heaviest? What life was like then? Maybe the limitations that you had physically at the time.
Yeah, basically, everything is harder when you're 400 pounds. No matter what you do, it's harder. Just getting upstairs, walking down a hallway, you're constantly out of breath, constantly just sweating, and everything you do is just harder. Getting in and out of my pickup truck, and seatbelts, all that stuff. I mean, probably that's the normal physical stuff that probably is pretty obvious, but the emotional stuff too. When you walk in somewhere, people are looking at you, and they might not say anything, but you know what they're thinking. And then you also know when, you come home and you're with your wife that she didn't marry me at 400 pounds. And there's a lot of guilt associated with it. And it's pretty easy to get in a dark place, which, is pretty understandable.
And were you? I think I saw somewhere you were on crutches or canes, or you had some custom things that you had to wear on your feet as far as for support.
Yeah, when I was younger, actually I was in probably my late teens. We noticed I was always getting hurt and falling and twisting my ankles. If I, even mowing the lawn, I'd step on a rock and I'd wipe out. And I guess growing up, you kind of get used to that. But we started realizing it was a little bit more than just me being clumsy. So when I got a job in a factory, I'd start like pulling on wrenches, and my wrist would like come right off of my arm. So my shoulder was the worst part. I'd sneeze, and sometimes my shoulder would dislocate. And so the doctor was actually targeting my shoulder when he was going to fix it. And when they did the surgery, when they opened it up, they found out that everything was super stretchy. It was almost like bubble gum. So what I got diagnosed with is a thing called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it's basically all the collagen in your body is like bubble gum. So it just stretches and stretches and stretches until it breaks. My sister also has the same thing. And so basically some people, would refer to it as hypermobile or double jointed, but my joints bend way too far. Which probably the worst thing is to be overweight with that, because you're trying to take it as easy as you possibly can on your joints, and the extra weight sure didn't help. So as I aged, things started getting worse and worse. So the idea was always immobilize it, brace it, crutches. And for years, the doctors just kept saying, do as little as possible, make sure you have armrests and everything supported. Basically, your joints are on limited time. Don't wear them out. And I listened. Everything I did hurt. No matter what it was, I would come back and it would hurt. So I just started getting less and less and less active. In fact, from my factory work, the doctor suggested I get, a sedentary job where I'm not doing much and not using my body for leverage, to quote him. So that's when I went back to school to become a teacher, to do less activity. And I think that's kind of where things actually started spinning out of control. What I thought I was doing was really good for myself and my family, and actually it turned out to backfire.
And where did things kind of go from there as far as being sedentary, weight gain, things like that?
Well, obviously, the bigger you get, the less you want to do, the more energy everything takes. So my life went from being, fairly active to, doing as little as possible through the day to get, to bed. So I was on a ton of pain medicine. Pain was a huge thing for me. I was on some serious pain medicine, and of course that started in my late teens. And the way pain medicine works, you get numb to it, and the more you take, you build up a tolerance. And the doctors, they just keep giving you more because you need more. And at one point, my blood pressure was 255 over 115, and so the doctors would say, well, this is because you're in pain all the time, and that raises your blood pressure. So I took a step from normal painkillers into some pretty heavy duty stuff called fentanyl, and it's actually stronger than morphine. And that was a time release patch that I had on all the time. So now you go from not wanting to do much because you're overweight, and then basically you're on horse tranquilizers. And I just did less and less. I would still work. I still was working, and I'd get home from work and basically just hit the couch. And the eating was getting worse and worse and worse as the fast food and the takeout stuff. So yeah, so it ended up being just work and hit the couch, movies, and do as little as possible.
And so what was actually your biggest?
I went to the doctor, and get on the scale, and it was like the same. You get that same sick feeling in your stomach, like what's it going to be this time? And this time she went, and I swear they do it on purpose. They start out really low so you can watch the numbers go up and up and up. And so she got to 300 and started at 0, creeped all the way up, and it didn't even budge. So 350 was as high as they could go, so she just put an X on the chart. And I can remember thinking, well, that's not the end of the world, because now he has no idea what I'm going to gain. Like, that's kind of it. So, and I can remember walking out of there. I know I was, if I wasn't over 400, I was so close, because I kept gaining and gaining after that visit.
Yeah, and I know when we chatted before, you kind of mentioned that a bit of a change for you came whenever your father and mother-in-law both had cancer. Can you talk kind of how that played into your motivation or your change?
I think everyone does this to a point, but it's easy to find excuses. Excuses are great things. They get you off the hook for everything. So having the EDS, that's a pretty good excuse. And being on the painkillers, that's a great excuse because you're in pain. So, you start just, any addiction, it's the same thing. You look for excuses of why you do this, and it's not really that bad. So I had a lot of good excuses for why I was where I was, why it was happening. And, I could easily feel sorry for myself, feel totally justified doing it. And that's a good place because you totally block out all your responsibility. There's no accountability if you have a genetic disease. There's nothing you can do about it. So I like that place. That was a good place to be. And then my wife's mom got diagnosed with leukemia. And she was an awesome lady, and she meant the world to my wife. They were best friends, super close. And so she fought like a warrior. And at the same time, she's going through that and struggling with all the bone marrow transplants and everything. My father was diagnosed with kidney cancer. They gave him 6 months to live, and he lasted 6 weeks. So we kind of had all this stuff going on. I mean, we were hit pretty hard with both of them, and things were crazy. But I can remember the pain in my wife's eyes going through this with her mom when her mom passed away. And one day, she was putting my socks on me, which she did a lot. And it's, I grew up my whole life being this, big tough guy. And my little wife is putting my socks and shoes on me. It's pretty demeaning. But I can remember looking in her eyes and seeing the same pain that I saw with her mom. And I think it was pretty obvious. I was next. I was hardly breathing through the night. I couldn't sleep. I was in bad shape. My cholesterol was through the roof. The doctor was really worried about me. He threatened to hospitalize me a couple times. And I think everybody kind of knew that I was the next one, that she was going to be attending a funeral for. And for some reason that day, seeing that look in her eye, just like, I have to do something, like, no matter what. And this time it's not for me. It's her. And, my kids are going to grow up with no dad, and she's not going to have a husband, and, she's lost enough. So I had this idea. I've been doing a lot of research online because I didn't do much but sit on the computer and watch TV. So I started looking at all these YouTube videos on before and after with the gastric sleeve, and I did research on the lap band, and I knew everything there was to know. I would sit and watch the surgeries, just so I knew what was going to happen. And I thought this was just a great idea. Like, this is what I've been looking for. I actually saw a video of a guy that he was probably my size, close to 400. And within a year, the guy was running a marathon. And I'm like, I can remember calling my wife, you got to see this. You got to see this. This is what we need to do. So she's supported me in every single thing I've ever done. Like, no matter what, even if it's a stupid idea, she'll go along with it. But this one was different. I could not sell this one to her. I just, she wouldn't have it. She's not going to tell me, no, don't do it. But I could tell she didn't want this to happen. So, being the manipulating person I am, again, going back to the addict, that's what you do. You learn how to manipulate people to get what you want. So I had this brilliant idea. I'm going to take her to my primary. I did all the paperwork. I got the paperwork in. I found the company that was going to do it. I think you had to go for a couple classes, in a conference center. You had to go for a few classes, and then they go through the psychology of what's going to happen and information. And all they had left to do was to go have my primary physician sign off on it. And we were very close to him because I used to see him probably twice a month, maybe even more than that sometimes, depending on, what prescription I needed refilled or whatever. So we went in, I made an appointment, and I told my wife to come right in the room with me. She sat down, and I had laid out this huge this very, very informative, little presentation to the doctor, and I got the paper out, and he thought about it for a minute, and he told me, he said, I have signed off on every single person that's asked me. He goes, I will likely sign off on every other person that asked me, but I can't sign off on yours. And I can remember my heart it just sunk into my stomach. His reasoning was that my joints were so weak that he was worried that if I lost a lot of weight, I'd lose a lot of muscle mass and I would be in a wheelchair and never get out. I swear when I left there, I swear he signed my death warrant. I'm done. That's it. It's game over. There's nothing I can do. This is it. I won't be around next year. I was pretty upset. And so I thought about it, and I'm like, well, there's only, the only thing I can do is diet. And my family has dieted since I can remember, up and down, yo-yo. I never really did too many diets. I think I did Atkins once, and it was successful, but you know the deal. You lose 50 and gain 60. You gain it back with interest. So I started doing probably what everyone else does. I started, for Thanksgiving, I can remember we went and bought 5 turkeys. And we used to process a lot of meat. So I processed these turkeys right, on the kitchen table, and we ground everything up, and I made 100 turkey burgers. So instead of, eating a McDonald's hamburger, we would eat turkey burgers. And instead of eating a half a pound of cheddar cheese, I swapped it out for mozzarella. Things like that. And it worked. I mean, I lost, 30, 40 pounds, and I still felt like crap.
Can you talk a little bit about whenever your diet changed or began the transition to where it's at now?
Transition is the perfect word, because I never went out and just looked for this diet. It's kind of, a lot of people go out and look for a lifestyle or whatever, and they just sign up for it and it happens. I don't think I could have ever done that. What I started doing, I started noticing when I ate, 3 double cheeseburgers and a large fry, of course, Diet Pepsi because you don't want to gain weight. Um, I felt like crap. I wanted to crawl under the table and go to sleep, but that was not a bad deal because that's what I wanted to do anyways. What I started noticing is if I have a salad with it, I didn't feel so bad. I was still eating, the garbage food, but it didn't feel as bad if I mixed it with good stuff. So, for example, I had this routine that you could set a watch by. I'd get up in the morning, I'd leave for work, and I'd go get 2 sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits, and like 2 hash browns or whatever. Like every single morning, that's what I did. For lunch, I'd get a half-pound taco and then jalapeno poppers. Like this is like every single day. Nothing ever changed. I had the same diet every day. And then when I leave work, I'd usually get 4 or 5 things off a dollar menu. Usually at least 2 or 3 double cheeseburgers. So what I started doing is I'd take a banana with me, and instead of getting the 2 sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits, I'd have a banana first, and I didn't really feel like the second one. Things like that. So I didn't just wake up one day and say, boom, I'm healthy now. I just, things that I had never tried before. Like, vegetables for me were French fries, So I just started incorporating a little bit of, half the time I didn't even know the food was healthy. It was either, a vegetable or a fruit, and I would just mix it in. You want me to keep going? Okay, so then, it wasn't having as much progress as I was feeling better, and every time I'd feel better, I'd do a little bit more. I wasn't into the whole exercise thing. That just didn't make sense because I was taught my whole life that exercise is a bad deal, and it is a bad deal from a standpoint of burning calories. But we'll get to that whole idea in a minute. But I was watching Netflix, and there's only so much on Netflix when you're watching TV every single day of your life. And I saw this movie title called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And I'm like, cool, that sounds like me. So I watched it, and it was unbelievably inspiring. The deal with Joe Cross, gets a juicer. He's from Australia. He comes over to the U.S., and for 60 days, his goal is to get off all his medicine, and he just drinks fresh fruit and vegetable juice out of his juicer. And he lost a ton of weight, and along the way, he meets all these people, and it's a really cool story. So I'm like, that's what I need. I need a juicer. So before the credits even rolled, I had ordered a juicer. And actually, the first of the year was coming around, so I'm like, all right, January 1st. And actually, this will be 3 years ago and some change. I bought the juicer, and it came, and we found some places. If you've ever juiced before, it takes a ton of vegetables. And if you start buying vegetables from a little tiny store, it can be super expensive. So we had to start learning how to, get vegetables, at a cheaper price. So we started looking around produce markets and farmers markets, and I didn't know this at the time, but what started to happen, I was shopping. We never shopped. We ordered pizza and wings maybe 3-4 nights a week. Shopping was usually out of a box. I mean, Stouffer's, all that stuff. And, we never went shopping. And if my wife went shopping, great, but I would never be caught dead in the grocery store. Just, guys don't do that. So, but what I started doing, I was getting, oh, look at this kale. It's $2 a bunch. Like, this is crazy. Get 4 of them. And, things like kale. I didn't know what kale was. But what it was doing, it was starting to pave the way to eat more fruits and vegetables when I was done. I knew that the fast went great. It was unbelievable. I think I lost 30 some pounds, but at the same time, I realized that this is totally unsustainable. Like, you can't live the rest of your life on juice, but I was feeling like energy through the roof. I had my first full night's sleep that I've had in years. I started feeling fantastic. So while I'm watching this, and Netflix has the Because You Watched, and a movie called Forks Over Knives came on. And that was, for me, that was a tipping point for me. I watched it, and you got to understand something. I grew up on a farm since I was 13 years old. I've been on a dairy farm. I thought I was going to spend my life on a farm. You know, we live in a farming community. Hunted, fished, and I used to sell meat. I mean, I would raise animals, and literally in my backyard, there's a butcher shop. We used to process meat. Some days, some weekends, we would be smoking like 300 pounds of meat and process it right in the house. So this whole idea of the meat and dairy thing, like that, just like it wasn't going to happen for me. But I'll see what, I'll give it a whirl. So after the 30 days, I'm like, I got a good start. I haven't had meat or dairy in 30 days, so I guess. On a side note, the last piece of meat I've ever eaten was a piece of pickled herring at New Year's, and that was like the worst choice of things that I could. I didn't know it was going to be my last piece. I would not have done that. But yeah, so I watched that, and I'm like, well, let's just try it for a week, just a week, just go, no meat, no dairy for a week, and well, what else is left to eat? Like, what are you supposed to eat? But I started learning that, potatoes don't have to be bad if they're not in oil. And so little by little, I just kept fine tuning and tweaking my diet. And I definitely eat more now than when I was 400 pounds. I mean, I eat, it's nothing for me to knock down, 5 pounds of potatoes even, for lunch. Like, especially if I'm training. I eat a ton of food. I'm a volume eater, and I still love food. And that was the one thing. I didn't want to give up food, and I eat good food.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes a misconception whenever people think, well, if I'm eating in this way, then it's just not going to be delicious. It's not going to be tastier. I won't be able to eat that much. And that's all incredible. So I know just from previous conversations with you, the physical aspect of it is secondary to the food, correct? But what kind of physical activities are you involved in now, or have you done? I feel like I've seen several half marathons, Tough Mudders, century bicycle races. Like, give us kind of a feel of what you're into now, physically.
What we were talking about before kind of leads into this. When you said about people don't understand that, you can eat good, hearty. I like to say hearty food because I mean, my mom's cooking. It was all you left the table and there was a brick in your stomach. And so my perception I don't even like stereotype. My perception of a plant-based eater is some, 80-pound guy nibbling on a spinach leaf. But the cool thing is, with the internet and stuff and all this information out there, you got guys like Rich Roll and stuff and Carter and Patrick Baboumian. I mean, these are athletes. These are like world-class athletes. Patrick's the strongest man in Germany right now, and he doesn't eat meat or dairy. So there's a huge misconception of all that. And I did not go into this to be an athlete. I just wanted to walk, and so that's what I did. I still remember. I still have the picture of the bench that I passed out on. My wife would say, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And I'd be like, "What's wrong with the car? What happened to it?" She goes, "No, just for fresh air." So I'm like, "Okay." So we have actually an old railroad line that they paved for a bike trail now, and so it's really nice. We have actually a lot of them around. So we drove to the trail and we went for a walk, and I made it 0.74 miles. That was it. I was done. I was out of gas, and I sat down and they came and picked me up. And I was hurting, because of the Ehlers-Danlos. I was all swollen. My ankles were huge. So I iced down. I took some ibuprofen, and a couple days later, we went back at it again, and I made it a mile. And little by little, I just kept walking. Just not this huge, oh, you can't walk, go run a marathon thing. It's just a little bit more than I did, the day before. And meanwhile, my very good friend had been in New York. It's actually, even though it's in New York, it's quite a distance away. It's about a 6 or 7 hour drive, but the Adirondack Mountains are up there. And I can't even begin to explain what they're like because you seriously have to experience them. And it's just a beautiful place. And he was, kind of not athletic, and he was kind of out of shape. And he set out a plan to climb a mountain, and he started walking as well. And I remember it was would have been 3 years ago in August. He showed me some pictures of a mountain that he had summited, and I got goosebumps. I'm like, I got to go over there. I got to go over there. And he looked at me and he's like, I could tell, like, how are you going to get up there? And I said, 1 year. I want 1 year to be up on top of a mountain. And that's what I did. I just kept walking a little bit more each day, and then I got a pair of boots and we started walking through the woods. The plan probably was a little irresponsible. I would walk until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I'd sit down and I'd have lunch, and then I'd try to get back because I knew the only way I was coming back is on my own power. But this guy, he was great with me. He took his time, and I know sometimes he was probably bored, but he just kept pushing me and pushing me. And so it took 2 attempts, but we ended up summiting Big Slide Mountain on 2012. The picture's right next to me. And it was like the coolest thing ever. It took, I think, almost 13 hours, and I thought I was going to die, but it was like the coolest thing ever. So as far as activity, I do a lot. I almost don't like to talk about it because if I would see myself at 400 pounds, I wouldn't have anything to do with this. Like if I could see where I was going, I wouldn't believe myself. But I love kayaking and biking and a little bit of running. I do whatever looks fun. I go do it, and yeah.
So, any goals physically or life-wise that you're working towards right now?
The goal for me always is to do a little bit more, just a little bit. I like weight training a little bit, and I like doing PRs. I like personal bests, and so this summer I have kind of a lot on my plate. I'm working on my first marathon at the end of May here. And me and my wife are going to try to climb Mount Washington in July. And then I'll do a couple 100-milers, hopefully, and see what goes from there.
Awesome. And I guess last 2 kind of parting questions. So if there's anything you could say to someone who is maybe where they're in the place that you were when you first started on the television, on the couch watching television, possibly in a bad place, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and feeling like this is just kind of the hand of cards that's been dealt to them, what would maybe you say to them to help them realize that there's hope that change is possible?
Well, I think first of all, we're not supposed to be sick. We're not supposed to be fat. We're supposed to have good lives. I mean, no one sets out to be, immobile and overweight and unhealthy. Like I don't think that's anyone's goal. Whether it, I think the key for me is you see someone, and that's why I say I hate even saying where I'm at now, because I don't want to turn anyone off, because it would have turned me off. The key for me was just doing a little, and this sounds crazy, but one of the first things I did, I kept a journal, which was really out of character for me. And I would write down like, I don't know, call it a prayer, call it whatever you want, but instead of, Lord, help me to lose weight. Like, it's so broad. It's so, and I've tried that before. Like, yeah, you give up. But instead of that, my prayer was strength. Just strength to change one small thing. Just one thing. Just small. Nothing crazy. And I remember, I still have it upstairs. I saved the journal. And the first thing I did, I remember a week before I started, I went to get out of my chair in my office, and I broke both arms off of it. So I had to get a new chair. But I remember, if I could get out of a chair, that was a big deal for me to get up out of a chair. But if I could do it once, I could do it twice. So if people saw me, I don't know if anyone saw me, but if people saw me, they would think I totally lost it. I would stand up, and I'd sit back down, and I'd stand up. that was a big deal. Like that was a big deal. And yeah, I think for me to see, a 400-pound guy running a marathon, I don't know. There's no way I can't do that. But I could get up out of a chair twice. Um, my wife has her own business, and I help her, at night. And to get up the stairs, I had to stop working with her on, like, if it had multiple floors, because I couldn't get up the stairs. When I started losing weight, I couldn't navigate up the stairs. It wasn't pretty, but I could get up there. And I figured if I can get to the top of that staircase, I'd turn right around, go back down, and I'd go back up again. And again, I probably at that point was the point I didn't care what people think anymore. But, little by little, those stairs, and that's actually how I trained for that first mountain, was with the very stairs that I couldn't get up. And I didn't go crazy. I mean, I'd go 10 extra steps, and I would write it down what I did the day before, and then, try instead of 10 steps, let's do 15. And before you know it, man, I was flying all over that building. And, sometimes I would spend an hour and a half just doing stairs. And it was a lot of little steps, but surprisingly, it wasn't that much time. I'm talking, within a few months, I go from not being able to go up a flight of stairs to really climbing, like at Letchworth State Park, climbing, 400 stairs. So it's all about the persistence and the consistency. It's not about these big, huge jumps. It's the little steps in between.
Awesome. And kind of in the same vein, but if you could go back in time and give that 400-pound self a piece of advice or a little bit of encouragement, what would you say that you think maybe would have resonated with yourself at the time?
Okay, I'm gonna do this without getting emotional, I hope. Um, so the normal response is, "Oh, do it now." What are you waiting for? You're wasting your life. Um, the truth is, and this is a harsh reality, and I hope I'm not, offending anyone, but at 400 pounds, sitting on the couch eating fast food, the reality is you don't care about yourself. It's suicide. It's suicide, but without pulling the trigger, you're just doing it slow. And that, I mean, that's reality. You're committing suicide. Um, I did that to my family, not just me. And that's the thing. If it's you and you don't care about yourself, fine. But if you have family, that's a whole nother dimension. Um, when I went into this, I was trying to have a better life, have a better life. So I was around for my wife. My goal was to not die. My goal was to not die for my wife. What happened? My wife ended up losing a ton of weight. And it wasn't, I never pushed anything. I'd pull some baked potato cubes out of the oven, and honestly, they were still eating pizza, and they'd be looking over at my food, and I'd turn my head, and they'd start snatching stuff off my plate. I'd come home, I'd make this huge salad, and, they're looking at it, and before you know it, my whole family's plant-based, and it wasn't a matter of, no, you can't have that, um, it's just what happened. It's contagious, and it spreads, and people see results. And that to me is the coolest thing about this. And what I didn't expect is, instead of my wife just living, paying bills, and getting through the month, we do some of the coolest things you could ever imagine. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many ways our life has changed together. I mean, when you talk about losing weight and being healthy, you never factor in the equation that your marriage is going to be totally new. I mean, we've been married for 23 years, and every year it's just getting better and better. I told you about the climbing Mount Washington. That was supposed to be my deal for my birthday, and she kept going online looking at videos. She goes, "I think I can do that with you." And I mean, seriously, what a thing to, one of your dreams to hopefully complete this mission, and she's right there the whole time. And we've done stuff like we get on our bicycles and we ride the Erie Canal. We'll go 70 miles, sleep at a bed and breakfast, and come home. And it's like the first bike ride we took, and I kid you not, this is embarrassing. I got this great idea to buy bikes, from a big box store. And I didn't make it a quarter mile, and I literally threw the bike in the ditch and walked home. Um, but now it's like it's crazy, and she's gonna run a half marathon with me this year. I don't know if she knows it yet though. But we call it our adventures. We just pack as much activity into life as we possibly can. TV's never on anymore. It's amazing. It's just, my whole life has changed. And I guess to go back and talk to the 400-pound me, um, I would say this is bigger than you. This is about everyone else around you.
Thanks for agreeing to this. Thanks for spending some time. Thanks for sharing your story. And it's a big thing to put yourself out there and to obviously, sometimes it's easy to see people who YouTube comments, or you feel insecure about things, but I think what you don't realize is all the people that see it that maybe don't comment, or that you change quietly and you may get an email from months down the road. And so yeah, thanks. I'm excited about this new project we're working on. I'm excited about hopefully you being a part of that, and really appreciate all the support you've given to it. And yeah, thanks for your story, for your inspiration, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Thank you for everything that you're doing too, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, Tim.
All right. We'll see you.